Hey, it's Mike with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Tuesday. It is March 13th. This will be our chart lesson for the day, and it was mostly all downhill today. We rallied in the overnight and just into the open, and then we had a little reversal here, and it was all downhill the rest of the day. So um, I really thought we might have a little two-legged correction and then another leg up, but didn't happen today. It was all downhill. So we had a little bit of a correction here. So I would have looked for that to be the middle of my pattern. And you measure that first, move down, and then look for a possible measured leg. And you can see we didn't quite get there. I would also measure, that's really where the downtrend started at that point. So I would measure that one as well and look for something in that range. And you can see we still didn't quite get there. Still a little bit short. So, but anyway, that would have, once we started going lower here, I'd be looking for a possible measured move. It didn't matter. It traded down into the 2 o'clock hour, and that would have, that would have kept you short for as long as you needed to be. If you were short late in the afternoon, I don't I don't recommend entering trades after 2 o'clock, but if you're managing a runner or something, by all means, sometimes you get some huge moves late in the afternoon. So definitely don't just exit because it's 2 o'clock. If the market's still, if you're managing a runner and it's still giving you, still going in your favor and giving you uh, movement in your direction, then stay with it. So, but if I were short here, I would have exited when we rallied out here, and that would have been a good exit point. Generally, what I'll do is once you get a break outside of your major channel, that's when I'll look to exit. And there's probably a bigger, I didn't put it on here, there's probably a bigger channel here. We're better off playing a shorter term stuff. And you can see there was a little bit bigger channel here that fits fairly well down through there. I didn't put it on there because really all you needed to find your trades were these last two swings here, and these shorter term trend lines were your better play. So, but anyway, I'm gonna back out. We'll talk about the trades and we'll wrap it up. I appreciate all the well wishes for my wife. I got quite a few comments and messages. I appreciate it. She needs it, and it's a pretty scary time for her and the rest of us. So I appreciate everybody thinking about us and prayers and so forth. So, but let's talk about our trades. You had to be a little patient this morning. This stuff started going sideways maybe around 4 in the morning or so, and this lasted all the way into the 7 o'clock open, and then you have this little drop and a quick move up. I don't see any way to catch that. This bar here is 24 ticks. That's a 6-point bar. So I just don't see any way you're going to get in that safely, especially since you've got a trend line working up here and a close outside, and you've already got a new high by the time this bar closes. So you don't have much option. You're better off just to skip that. And then the bottom falls out of it just as well. I want to mark this green, but when you start trying to pick tops, you're almost always better off to wait on a lower high, and you really don't get one here. You get a lower high here, it never breaks lower, it keeps going up, and you just kind of start going sideways. So you don't want to go short right there, really, especially with everything back above the EMA. So you really just don't get a chance to go short, and then we try to go short once, try to go short twice. And so there's a failed second entry short there bouncing off the EMA, but notice that it never breaks higher until it's made one more little jog down and then turns up. And there's a lot of sideways stuff here. So this one, you could argue for this to be green. It's really close. I went ahead and went with it blue, just simply because it is a failed second entry short, and we are still making higher highs and higher lows there until this bar. And so, but you got to be really careful because there is a lot of congestion right there. But it does look like a repeat pattern of this almost as well. You moved up and you kind of went sideways and you drop down sharply and then take off. And you notice this one moves up, goes sideways, kind of drops down, not nearly as sharply as that one did, but it still has that repeat pattern feel to it. And that's a relatively bullish bar. And I actually had originally drawn a trend line here and drug it down, and you can see that fits off there. We closed a little outside, but when it bounced off of it again there, combined with the other things we just talked about, I kind of like that one. And notice this made a new low here. This swing is lower than this swing, and it moves up, and you get a first entry short, a second entry short, and again, we're bouncing off that trend line again. And so we're probably going to test this high, and that would be my target, is to test that high. And it just takes off right there. And it runs up. And going back again to this was really tempting, but you really just need to wait on a lower high, and you don't really get a lower high set up here. You've already moved considerably, considerable distance here, multiple points. So you got to be careful getting short after that without a little correction. But this is so far away from the EMA, and there are two legs up, and you do have that little high, and then you try to go lower and it jogs up, and it actually goes higher and turns and goes right out the other side. So if you wanted to take that, I'm willing to make it green. It's aggressive because you're trying to pick tops, and that can always be, most of you know how I feel about trying to pick tops and bottoms. Most people cannot do it consistently. But when you get that far away from the EMA, and the fact that we had a break of this, a close outside of this trend line, a move to a new high, basically a measured move. There's your first leg, and we actually got quite a bit more in a measured move. And you actually have that little trap, and it moves up, and then it shoots down. Just being that far away from the EMA, it's just a matter of time till it comes back. So I like that trade for that reason. I'm only going to make it green because it is very aggressive. So we already talked about these two. I almost skipped over that when I got distracted there for a minute. But this whole leg is similar to this one. You get another move up, and notice that you run up like you did here, and you get that little extra jog, and then you get that little extra jog, and it turns down. So this has a very similar feel, although we're not nearly as far away from the EMA over here as we were over here. So I didn't really feel as comfortable marking this one, although we do have a close outside this trend line, and this is one leg up with a couple of legs in it, and then a little correction in the second leg, and they're pretty much measured moves. Measure that one. And you get your next one here, and you can see they're pretty much a measured move. And actually, you could measure this one here, and you probably should go to right there. So, but still close enough. But then everything turns down. Look how it shoots right through the EMA. So you're just looking for a reversal type pattern here, and you finally get a close outside, but that's just a first entry, and then it goes higher, and so you get a second entry up here, fairly small bar. You did push back through the EMA. There is a couple of bars in a row there, so it's not a perfect setup, but this is congestion. There's two legs up. It is the first break, and generally what you would expect with a move that strong right there, you would expect to maybe get a two-legged correction and then another leg down, as we talked about, as I had kind of talked about before. And then you'd measure that leg, and you'd look for a measured leg, and you can see we basically got two measured legs down there. And then sometimes you'll continue on from there. It's like the midpoint of your pattern. Didn't turn out to be that way today, but a lot of times that's what happens. So when we started lower here, I would look for a measured move. Usually if one of them moves real quickly and strongly like that, the next one's a little more, you'll get that measured move, but it'll be a lot more swings. It's just not as clean and as fast as the first one is. Today it was. So you got those two clean moves down, and then notice there's a new high here, and you're moving down. There's a first entry, pull back, then there's a second entry. So this is a failed second entry long. Back to the EMA. I drew this trend line down across here and drug it up just to see where we'd turn down. Of course, it's turning down perfect right there. It's tempting to go short right here, but I'd want to confirm this trend line first. Even though that's a failed second entry long, you could argue for it. It is off the EMA. If you did draw this trend line down through there and drug it to the top, it fits. So if you saw all that, you could probably argue for a short right there on a little more aggressive. But generally you want to wait, and look what happens. It runs down, first entry, pull back, second entry, and you get that third touch of the trend line, confirmation, failed second entry long, really bearish bar, kind of a breakout pullback short from that little double bottom like across there. That's the better place to enter. And look at it go, and it just takes off. And you had a runner there easily. Of course, you'd had a runner up here too, but this one was a lot more aggressive. You had a runner here, but you get a runner here, and this one's not so aggressive. It fits the rules much better. We actually come back to the trend line again, and it's just too much sideways. There's three or more bars in a side by side. That's a doji. So I think you got to skip that one, even though it's off the key entry point. You just don't really get another chance to enter this one. And you finally get a break. And again, that's a first entry, and you got this little short-term trend line working up, and it just really doesn't set up. You got a 2-bar matching low, even though it's a really bearish. Again, I think you're better off to wait on a second entry or a lower high. You get a lower high here, but now you've already had a break and a new low, so I think that one's a little bit risky. Although you may get a measured move, you get your break and 2 measured legs down is what you hope to see for a perfect kind of setup, and you see you get that. So you may consider that entry, but I'm just not crazy about it because it's the first entry. By now you need to be counting off the lows, and that's a first entry. It's a relatively big bar. I'll make it green, but I'm just not crazy about it. So we rock it on down, and we're moving up. And you got a trend line moving up. You get a close outside. You try to go higher once. You try to go higher twice. So that's a failed second entry long. But by the time it sets up, you're just going sideways. Look how flat that EMA. Look at those bars all inside those highs and lows. You need to wait on something better than that, and look what happens. It pushes down, breaks out, comes back, gives you a breakout pullback short, a fairly bearish bar, but this is a double top right here, so you really have a failed second entry short. You can see that double top. So first entry, second entry, that's where you want to enter. It's mostly bearish. It didn't quite close on slow, but it's probably going to trap some longs. So I like going short there, and off it goes again. You wouldn't expect it necessarily to do this. It actually has one more little jog back right there, but now you're right into this low, and I really thought it would take off there. The fact that it didn't here makes it a little less attractive. So I don't feel comfortable going short right there, although it did turn higher and turn and go out the other side, but it's right into that low. You could have waited till this one closed and then put a stop. Then you're going short at the very low of the day. I mean, we've already gone really below the overnight lows. So it's just not a very attractive setup in my opinion. So I think you skip it. Wait for the next one, and you actually get one here. And the only reason I like this one is because we've been walking down that trend line. That's a fairly strong move, so you're probably going to test that low. But once we started going past down here and overshoot, you got to figure we're going to make a measured move from this from this channel up here. And so find your equal distance and draw it, and we're not there. And so you would figure with this break here, we're probably going to at least make a new low, and we're probably trading down to this line, which is your trend channel line. It's going to be 2 tiers because this is just too much for an overshoot up here, and especially now that we're headed down strongly. So you've got enough room. So for that reason, I made that one green. It's not quite back to the EMA, but with that strong a trend line and your break here, that's still a pretty good break. That's close enough. And notice how it drops and goes straight to that point, which all that is, all you had to do was find the equal distance between these two and copy the line and drag it down. And that's what I did, an equal distance. And notice how it closed right on that line. And you could have had this line in place. Once you broke through here consistently, I would have already had that line down here looking for, that's where prices are probably going. And notice that, and that would have given you a little more, even though we weren't back to the trend line here, that would have made more sense here because we're probably headed down to the lower line. And this is just your midline, and prices are working that midline as they head lower. You won't always get there, but that's what you're expecting prices to do, most likely. So, but notice how it bounces there. You get a first entry short, then you get a second entry short that fails. You're still a good ways away from the EMA. I would rather see this above the EMA and come back and test it. But we're probably going back to the EMA. We're probably going to the other side. And this does, you draw that trend line off the first two, it does confirm that trend line. I originally had it a little bit steeper, but I adjusted it here on these last closes. But that's a failed second entry short. It confirms a little short-term trend line. We're expecting prices to come back. Generally, you got to be careful picking longs, but we've had a pretty good move down. This trend line, this two-tier channel is played out. The bigger one's played out. This one's played out. We're going to at least probably come back to this midline, and definitely the EMA because we're way overdue in this midline. So for that reason, I've marked that one. You could probably argue for it to be green. It's right there. You know, it's trying to pick bottoms, but you got a little bit more to work with here than you would have if you're just picking because suddenly you're too far away from the EMA and you got a nice bullish bar. So, I mean, we were a good bit away from the EMA here and you had a bullish bar, and look what happened. It turns and goes down. So, generally you want to wait on the lower high or the higher low coming off the bottom, and then wait on that one more attempt to go lower. And so now you've tried to go lower 2 more times. You're not back to the EMA. It's right off the trend line. It confirms the trend line. The short-term one's what I'm talking about. And you're probably at least coming back to the EMA. So I think that one's worth risking it. It's a little aggressive still, so it's right there, borderline, but I'm going to leave it blue. So it's just right there. So, and it comes back again. Notice how we push through the EMA, or we push through the EMA. We also push through the midline. Then we come back and test it, and then turn up. This one is very, very tempting, but with prices working up and down this EMA, we could have taken down lower again. This is enough correction here, and that's a first break outside. We're probably going to test that high, but we did have an overshoot here. So for that reason, you expect a break here. But you got to be careful going long there because a lot of times on these overshoots, especially on a big downtrend, it could have just taken off again. So I think you got to skip that one. You definitely don't want to be getting long in here. There's no short setup really. There's a second entry short, but that's a dead doji, perfect doji, and now you got 1, 2, 3, 4 bars stacked up. Here's a fifth one, even though it starts to work a little lower. You don't want to be getting short there, and you definitely don't want to be getting long. So you get another close outside. Once it goes higher, I would be looking for a measured move, and then maybe a reversal. And notice what we did. We got one, and we go lower, and then we try to go higher one more time to get that lower high, second entry short, big bearish bar. That's where you want to go short. And what you have to do is you have to let these corrections play out. And a lot of times people try to get short here and then it didn't play out. And then they try to get short here. Wait on that lower high. Let it play out, and then It was pretty obvious here we had that little break higher that trapped people, and it's tempting to go short right there, but I'd wait on that lower high just to make sure this correction's over. And this was a really good one because not only do you make a lower low here, you get a two legs up in the second entry in a big bearish bar. So that's where you want to go. And the bottom falls out of it again. So you caught another runner here. You're running down. You get a first entry. Try to go lower again. You get a second entry long. It fails. This is really your signal bar. I'd go short below that bearish bar. That's your first break lower, but your stop still has to go above this bar. And that's a failed second entry long. Your first break of this short-term trend line, and you're probably going to make a new low here. This has been a pretty strong trend down, and you might even get another leg down as we talked about earlier. And so this may be real early in the downtrend, and notice that it is. We actually make one more attempt to come up, and notice this one, you got a little trend line working up. You get a first entry, pull back second entry, another big bearish bar right there. Again, your stop has to go above that bar. So that makes this a pretty big bar. You probably let it break lower and try a limit order back a tick or so, and you could have gotten filled maybe a tick or two back in that bar, and then off it goes to the downside again. And I really didn't see another entry. Notice you got a new high again here, and it moves down first entry, it moves down again second entry, and look how this one actually went higher and turned and went out the other side. That would have been a great place, and it's right there at 2 o'clock. That would have been a great entry right there. Although it's a really, really big bar. But what I'd do is let it break higher, and when it went out this other side, I'd already have a sell stop in there. And off it goes, and you could have ridden that down for an hour or so or more. So anyway, that's what I saw today. Again, a leg down, a major correction, and then we're working on another leg down. Maybe in the after hours we'll go ahead and see prices make a measured move. But my guess is we've had the break and we've had a big move down to a new low, so we'll probably correct here for a little bit. It wouldn't surprise me to see some more downward move. We just came off this, as we talked about yesterday, we were working around this 2800 hour, 2800 price level, not hour. We're working around this 2800. That's all. These are always emotional levels, and generally prices will work around those both sides multiple times or test it multiple times and work its way through. So we backed off that considerably. So we may work down and test the 2700. I mean, when we first went through both of those, we went right through 27. We were at 28 before you could blink an eye. So it wouldn't surprise me to see us work back and test the. We actually got as low as 2,500, I think, on that big sell-off recently, and I would expect that we would probably try to retest that again before moving on. But this market's been crazy lately, and the last couple of days it's been kind of quiet. During rollover, we actually had a pretty good move here on the 9th, but yesterday it was pretty flat, and then today we sold off again. So we're probably working through rollover, and this will be your, you should be trading June now if you're not already. I wouldn't trade the March contract anymore. There's not any volume left in it now, basically. So it doesn't expire for a couple more days, but I wouldn't be trading it. So you need to be moved over by now. So generally we don't move on the first rollover day because the volume doesn't move that quickly. So a lot of times people will say, well, you didn't roll over on rollover day. Well, you don't have to roll over on that first day. Usually it's the next day or so before we'll roll over. So keep that in mind. But I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. I'm still not sure what we're going to do, whether I'm going to work Thursday or not. I'm definitely not working Friday. I hadn't made up my mind. I'm going to have to see how things go for my wife and what we have to do to have her ready for her surgery and so forth. So I may or may not work Thursday. Sometimes just working keeps your mind off things. So if I'm at the office, I'll definitely do a chart lesson, but I'm just not sure what's going to happen yet. But we'll definitely do one tomorrow. I will be here tomorrow working, so we'll have to see about Thursday. Definitely nothing on Friday though, so just be prepared for that. But I'm done for today. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.